So I'd like to start this review off with a bit of backstory. Growing up, the Flash was one of my favorite superheroes. He had a simple yet cool design and a power that any little kid would love to have to run super fast and beat all your friends in a race. I was the Flash for Halloween in second grade, had him as a figure, and loved his fun, frantic, and comedic personality in the LEGO games and specials. As I got older, I tried watching the Flash TV show, and while it definitely goes downhill even as soon as the third season, Grant Gustin as Barry Allen was always a great portrayal of the character, and the way the first season tells his backstory and intertwines him with Reverse Flash is great storytelling, plain and simple. And then further seasons show the true extent of the Flash's power, with him time traveling and running to alternate dimensions. In Justice League Unlimited, Wally West as the Flash is an easy A tier character for me, and if you saw my video on the animated Flashpoint movie, you'd know that I think that one's a banger. And then there's the DC Extended Universe. The first movie I saw of these was the original Justice League by Joss Whedon. Ezra Miller was alright, but they're no Grant Gustin. And while it was kinda interesting seeing him as a rookie hero and having him become friends with Cyborg, he didn't really do it for me. Then, Zack Snyder's Justice League made him a much cooler and powerful version of the hero, and Ezra Miller was even a bit better in the role. Despite all of this, I was really interested in what they were going to do with the Flash in his first solo movie, and it's about Flashpoint and it's resetting the DC movies entirely. Look, Flashpoint is an iconic Flash story, but it's a monumental point in the DC timeline that shouldn't be taken lightly. You're telling me that the first ever live-action Flash movie is already one of the largest-scale Flash stories of all time? And this is after the great Flashpoint movie and so-so portrayal of the event on the Flash TV show? On top of that, all the Ezra Miller controversies came to light, and it was shown that the movie would be following the trend of the DCEU movies shoving Batman and Superman in your face into another hero's movie. I went from highly anticipating this movie to not really wanting to see it at all. But then the trailers started looking pretty good, and people behind the scenes were saying good things about it, so I decided to check it out. And, well, it's not bad, but it's not very good either. Let's start off with some good stuff. I respect the fact that this movie brought in Batman and had references to Justice League that felt natural, unlike how Shazam 2 just mentions how these heroes exist in the universe just because. It was cool to see Ben Affleck back in the role, even if he was never my favorite Batman. Speaking of Batman, I'd say Michael Keaton returning to the role in this alternate timeline was cool and probably my favorite part. He brought me right back to the Burton era of Batman films and made me realize how I've kinda been missing that style of Batman. Though I will admit that after a while, it felt like they wanted everything involving him to be a, hey, remember this about Batman? Isn't that cool? And all in all, it was neat to see him back in the role and makes Batgirl being cancelled sting all the more. The scenes within the Speed Force while Flash was running looked pretty cool, and frankly, so did the costumes on both the Flashes. And some of the scenes regarding Barry's family life, whether in flashbacks or in scenes from alternate timelines, did find an emotional chord. And there were scenes in the past with his mom and the present with his dad that reminded me of the heart of Barry's character. Oh, also at the end of this movie, there were several cameos. Most of them didn't really do anything for me, but there was one hilarious and unexpected one from a canceled movie that I won't spoil here. That was great. Sadly, I think that's my good stuff, so it's time for the rest of the movie. I've been trying to stay spoiler-free for most of this review, but there may be some light spoilers coming up. Firstly, the CGI is not very good at all. I'm sure you've seen the memes of the battle with Zod's army looking straight out of a video game, and I 100% agree. It was so bad at some points that the actors themselves looked more CG than real. Also, while the Speed Force looked neat while they were running, there were moments when they stopped to pick a place in time to travel to, and those were all over the place. And the final scenes in the Speed Force, while sometimes visually cool, were mainly a mess. Then there's Supergirl. She really isn't in the movie that much. It initially looks like the movie is going to do cool stuff with her, giving her elements of Superman's backstory from Flashpoint, but then they fail to flesh out her motives in a compelling way. They literally introduce her, have her go off and see what Zod is doing, and then have her join the good guys because Zod is evil. And then there's Barry and Barry. Yeah, this movie has two Barry Allens, and both of them share similar problems. They still write Barry to be very awkward and have dialogue that just drags out his insecurities when speaking with others. And when you have both of these characters that are extremely clunky bouncing off each other for several scenes of just them, it's not very good at all. Both Barrys are still bumbling due to them still being new heroes, but comes off as a little dumb at points. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the atrocious baby rescuing scene, but OG Barry blatantly ignores the dangers of time travel throughout the whole movie, and alternate Barry is making bad attempts at jokes throughout all of it as well. I get he's younger and probably didn't study as hard as OG Barry due to a lack of trauma, but come on. Barry Allen isn't meant to be a dumb character. Yeah, he can be a bit jokey and lighthearted, but he's ultimately serious when doing hero work. He's also a really smart guy, like, he's literally a scientist. That's just something I can't see these versions of Barry being. And in the original Flashpoint story, Barry impulsively travels back in time, but they don't have a scene of him talking with Bruce, a character we know he looks up to and respects in this canon, but kind of just dismisses him and does it anyway. It's all silly. Finally, I'd like to talk about the antagonists. For most of the movie, there are no active antagonists. We know Zod is there, but we barely see any of him and don't feel like he's really endangering humanity. The movie is too busy spending time with the two Barry shenanigans and Michael Keaton to build up the threat of Zod or even Barry's time traveling. There's also a creature in the Speed Force that we see glimpses of, but doesn't really affect too much until the end, where he's a lot like Zurg from Lightyear, aka a not very good or build up antagonist at all. I get what they were trying to do with him, and I'd say they did it better than Lightyear did, but the movie still dedicates so little time to it. I feel like if they did a story more focused on Barry and not on Flashpoint and resetting everything, they could have brought in someone like Reverse Flash as a more major antagonist. DC has some amazing iconic villains, and both this movie and Shazam Fury of the Gods ignored them, which I think hurt both films in the long run. So yeah, this movie wasn't that good. It barely even counts as a Flash movie with all the Batman and General Zod stuff overtaking the plot from Barry. Its dialogue is clunky, its CGI is not good, and it's an inferior copy of an already great story that has been brought to the screen before. James Gunn cannot come to DC sooner. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Flash. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this movie, and if you like it more or less than the animated Flashpoint movie. If you couldn't tell, I very much prefer that one. Also, subscribe and leave a like if you feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye.